Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing port of the USS Harmony as it approached the ethereal homeworld. The planet gleamed like a massive jewel against the black void of space, its surface covered in crystal spires that caught and reflected the light of 3 suns. This was the moment he had trained for his entire career. First contact with the ethereal empire would mark humanity's entry into the galactic community. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as his crew prepared for the historic meeting. Dr. Lisa Carter reviewed her xenobiology notes for the 100th time, her fingers drumming nervously against her datapad. Engineer Danny Walsh checked the ship systems one final time, making sure everything was perfect for their guests. Communications Officer Amy Rogers monitored the translation protocols, ensuring every word would be understood correctly. Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. The ethereal empire controlled a significant portion of this galaxy sector, and their technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. If this meeting went well, it could open doors to trade, knowledge, and protection from the more hostile alien races that roam the stars. The first sign that something was wrong came from Amy's station. Her face went pale as she listened to the incoming transmission. "Captain, the ethereal delegation is asking about our emotional control protocols. They want to know if we've suppressed our feelings for this meeting." Jake frowned. The briefing materials had mentioned that ethereals were telepathic, but nothing about emotional suppression. "Tell them we've prepared standard diplomatic protocols. Our crew is trained in proper conduct." Amy relayed the message, but the response made her hands shake. "Sir, they're saying that might not be enough. They're asking if we can completely shut down our emotional responses." Before Jake could respond, the first ethereal shuttle approached the Harmony. Through the viewing port, he could see the craft's elegant design. It looked more like a work of art than a vehicle, all flowing curves and translucent material that seemed to glow from within. The docking bay filled with a soft blue light as the shuttle settled into place. Jake straightened his uniform and walked toward the airlock with his team. This was it. The moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss, and Jake got his first look at the ethereal delegation. They were tall and graceful, moving with an otherworldly elegance that made them seem to float rather than walk. Their skin had a crystalline quality that caught the light, and their eyes held an ancient wisdom that spoke of centuries of life. Commander Zara Lightweaver led the delegation. She was beautiful in an alien way, her features sharp and perfect like carved crystal. When she spoke, her voice had a musical quality that made Jake want to listen forever. "Captain Morrison, we greet you in the name of the ethereal empire. We hope this meeting will bring understanding between our peoples." Jake stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. "Commander Lightweaver, it's an honor to meet you. Humanity looks forward to a peaceful relationship with your empire." The moment Jake spoke, something went terribly wrong. Commander Lightweaver stumbled backward, her hand pressed to her forehead. The other ethereals began to sway, their crystalline skin flickering with unstable light. One of them collapsed to the deck, writhing in apparent agony. "What's happening?" Jake moved toward the fallen ethereal, but Commander Lightweaver held up a trembling hand to stop him. "Stay back," she gasped. "Your emotions, they're too strong. We can't we can't filter them." Dr. Carter stepped forward, her medical training overriding her confusion. "Let me help him." "No," Commander Lightweaver's voice cracked like breaking glass. "Don't come closer, you're all mind poisoners." The accusation hit Jake like a physical blow. Around him, his crew stood frozen in shock. They had come in peace, offering friendship and cooperation, only to be told they were somehow toxic to the very beings they wanted to befriend. More ethereals were collapsing now, their graceful forms trembling on the deck. Commander Lightweaver managed to activate some kind of communicator device, speaking rapidly in her own language. Within minutes, the docking bay filled with armed ethereal guards. Jake tried to remain calm despite the chaos around him. "Commander, we didn't know. If we're causing harm, we can leave immediately. Just let us help your people." But Commander Lightweaver was no longer listening. Her eyes had gone cold, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of judgment. You came here knowing what you were. You came here to hurt us. This was an attack. The ethereal guards moved with fluid precision, surrounding Jake and his crew. Their weapons looked like crystalline rods, but Jake could feel the energy radiating from them. These beings who had seemed so peaceful moments ago now looked at him with fear and hatred. You're making a mistake, Jake said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. We didn't know about your sensitivity to emotions. We would never intentionally hurt anyone? Commander Lightweaver's laugh was bitter. Lies, your kind are savages. We've heard the stories from other species. You wage war on each other, you destroy your own planet, you spread chaos wherever you go. And now you've brought that chaos to us. Jake felt a surge of anger at the unfair characterization of humanity, but he forced himself to remain calm. Getting emotional would only make things worse. Please, just give us a chance to explain. We're not what you think we are, but it was too late. The ethereal guards activated restraining fields that locked around Jake and his crew. The energy felt cold against his skin, and he could sense that it was somehow dampening his ability to feel. The world became muted, like looking at everything through thick glass dot as they were marched away from the docking bay. Jake caught sight of a figure watching from an observation deck above. She was younger than the others, with silver hair that seemed to flow like liquid light. Her eyes met his for just a moment, and he saw something unexpected there. Not hatred or fear, but curiosity. The young ethereal stepped back quickly, disappearing from view. Jake didn't know it then, but he had just seen Princess Vera Starwhisper, heir to the ethereal throne and the one being who might hold the key to preventing a war between their peoples. The crystalline prison cells were cold and sterile, designed to contain the emotional output that the ethereals found so dangerous. Jake sat with his crew in the dim light, watching as Dr. Carter tried to make sense of what had happened. Danny worked on the cell's energy patterns, looking for any weakness they might exploit. Amy monitored the communication frequencies, hoping to learn something about their captor's intentions. Jake stared at the ceiling, replaying the disastrous first contact in his mind. They had come in peace, offering friendship and cooperation. Instead, they had been branded as mind poisoners and thrown in prison. The worst part was that he still didn't understand how they had hurt the ethereals. Human emotions were just human emotions. How could feelings be toxic to another species? Outside their cell, he could hear the soft footsteps of ethereal guards. They whispered to each other in their musical language, and Jake caught fragments of words that the translation system could process. They were talking about the humans as if they were dangerous animals, creatures to be feared and contained. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of the day they would meet other intelligent species among the stars. They had imagined grand alliances, shared knowledge, and a brotherhood of sentient beings working together for the good of all. Instead, they had found themselves cast as the villains in someone else's story, but Jake wasn't ready to give up hope. Somewhere in this crystalline prison, beyond the fear and misunderstanding, there had to be a way to bridge the gap between their species. He had seen something in that young ethereal's eyes, a spark of curiosity that suggested not all of them had closed their minds to the possibility of peace. As the artificial night cycle began and the prison grew quiet, Jake made a silent promise to himself and his crew. They would find a way to prove that humanity wasn't the monster the ethereals believed them to be. They would show them that human emotions, however chaotic they might seem, came from a place of caring and connection. The path ahead was uncertain, but Jake Morrison had not come this far to give up now. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but it might also bring new opportunities. In the darkness of their crystalline cell, hope remained alive. 3 days had passed since the failed diplomatic meeting when the alarms began screaming through the ethereal prison facility. Jake Morrison jerked awake in his crystalline cell as red warning lights flashed across the corridors. The sound was different from anything he had heard before. A high-pitched wail that seemed to vibrate through his bones. Danny Walsh pressed his face against the transparent wall of their cell, trying to see what was happening. Captain, something big is going down out there. The guards are running everywhere. Amy Rogers was already at her portable communication device scanning the frequencies. I'm picking up multiple ships approaching fast. The ethereals are calling them Savage Claws. Sounds like pirates or raiders. Jake felt his stomach drop. The Savage Claws were notorious throughout this sector of space. They were a brutal alien race that attacked without warning, taking prisoners for slave labor and destroying everything else. If they were attacking this facility, everyone inside was in serious danger. Dr. Carter looked up from her medical equipment. The ethereals might be telepathic, but they're not warriors. They won't stand a chance against the Savage Claws. The building shook as explosions rocked the facility. Through the corridor windows, Jake could see ethereal guards running past with weapons drawn. Their usually calm and graceful movements were now frantic and desperate. The attack had caught them completely off guard, a massive explosion somewhere. Above them sent cracked spider webbing across the ceiling. Chunks of crystal fell like deadly rain, and Jake realized their prison might become their tomb. The energy field holding their cell door flickered and died as the facility's power systems began to fail. Now's our chance, Jake said, pushing against the cell door. It swung open with surprising ease. Everyone stay together. We need to find a way out of here. They moved through the corridors carefully, avoiding the areas where battle sounds were loudest. The ethereal guards were too busy fighting to worry about escaped human prisoners. Jake could hear the terrible sounds of combat echoing from the upper levels, the screams of wounded ethereals mixing with the harsh roars of the Savage Claws. As they turned a corner, Jake nearly stepped on something glittering on the floor. It was a piece of crystalline skin, shattered and covered in what looked like silver blood. The sight made his stomach turn. Whatever was happening up there, it was brutal. Danny pointed down a side corridor. Captain, I think I see an exit that way. Looks like it leads to the transport bays. But as they moved toward the exit, Jake heard something that made him stop cold. It was a soft whimpering sound, barely audible above the chaos. Someone was hurt and alone, hidden in one of the side chambers. Captain, we need to go, Amy urged, her voice tight with fear. The whole place is coming down, Jake hesitated. Every instinct told him to get his crew to safety. But the sound of someone in pain pulled at something deep inside him. He had never been able to walk away from someone who needed help, even if that someone was from a species that considered him a monster. You three head for the exit, he said finally. I'll catch up. Dr. Carter grabbed his arm. Jake, you can't. If it's one of them and you touch them, you could kill them just by trying to help. I have to try, Jake said, gently pulling free from her grip. Go, that's an order. He followed the sound down a narrow corridor that led to what looked like a medical wing. The whimpering was louder now, mixed with words in the ethereal language that the translation system couldn't quite process. Someone was badly hurt and probably dying. Jake found her in a small chamber filled with what looked like healing crystals. She was young, maybe the equivalent of a human in her 20s, with silver hair that flowed like liquid light. Her crystalline skin was cracked and bleeding, silver blood pooling beneath her broken form. It was the same ethereal he had seen watching from the observation deck during the failed diplomatic meeting. Even through her pain, her eyes held that same curious intelligence that had struck him before. She looked up at him with those luminous eyes and tried to speak. Stay, stay away, she whispered in accented English. You single quotes LL whole hurt me. Jake's heart broke at the fear in her voice. Here she was, probably dying, and she was more afraid of him than of her injuries. I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help. No, she gasped, trying to crawl away from him. You're a mind poisoner, your touch ... It kills. Jake knelt down slowly, keeping his hands visible. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm a human being, not a monster. And I'm not going to let you die here alone. The young ethereal's eyes widened as she looked at him. Up close, Jake could see that her injuries were severe. The crystalline structure of her skin was shattered in several places, and the silver blood was flowing freely. Without medical attention, she would die within minutes. "Please," Jake said softly, "let me help you. I don't know if my touch will hurt you, but I know that doing nothing will definitely kill you." She stared at him for a long moment, pain and fear warring in her expression. Finally, she nodded weakly. "My name is Vera, Princess Vera Starwhisper." Jake felt his breath catch. She was royalty, the daughter of the ethereal emperor. If she died while he was trying to help her, it would mean war between their species. But if he did nothing and let her die, the result would be the same. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling as it approached her wounded shoulder. The moment his skin made contact with hers, both of them tensed, waiting for the terrible reaction that had occurred during the diplomatic meeting. Nothing happened. Jake's touch was warm and gentle against her crystalline skin. Instead of pain, Vera felt something she had never experienced before. It was like being wrapped in a blanket of calm, steady emotion. His feelings were strong, but they didn't hurt. They felt protective, caring, determined to help. "How ... she whispered, looking up at him in wonder. "I don't know," Jake said, his voice filled with equal amazement. "But right now we need to get you medical attention." He carefully lifted her in his arms, surprised by how light she felt. Her crystalline structure was different from human bone and muscle, but she was still a living being in pain. As he carried her toward the medical supplies he had seen earlier, he could feel her relaxing against him. "Why are you helping me?" she asked weakly. "Your people, they're prisoners here." Jake found the medical supplies and began cleaning her wounds as gently as possible. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because you're hurt and alone, and nobody deserves to die like that." As he worked, something strange began to happen. The cracks in Vera's crystalline skin seemed to be healing faster than they should. The silver blood stopped flowing, and the damaged areas began to regenerate. Jake's touch wasn't just harmless. To her, it was actually helping her heal. "This is impossible," Vera breathed, watching her injuries close. "Humans are supposed to be toxic to us. Your emotions are supposed to kill us." Jake finished bandaging her wounds and sat back on his heels. "Maybe what your people think they know about humans isn't the whole truth." The sound of approaching footsteps made them both look up. Dr. Carter appeared in the doorway, her face pale with worry. "Jake, we need to go now. The savage claws are sweeping this level." But before Jake could respond, another group of footsteps echoed from the opposite direction. Ethereal guards were coming, probably looking for their missing princess. In minutes, both groups would converge on this room, and Jake would be caught in the middle. "Take me with you," Vera said suddenly, struggling to sit up. "I can't stay. Here, the savage claws will use me as a bargaining chip against my father." Jake looked at her in surprise. "You want to come with us? We're escaped prisoners." "You saved my life," she said, her voice growing stronger. "You touched me and I didn't die. Everything I was taught about humans. It's wrong, isn't it?" Jake helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as she tested her healing injuries. "We're not monsters, if that's what you're asking. We're just people trying to make our way in the universe." The footsteps were getting closer from both directions. Jake had to make a decision quickly. Take the ethereal princess with them and risk being accused of kidnapping, or leave her here to face whatever fate awaited her. "Lisa," he called to Dr. Carter, "can you help me get her to the transport bay?" Dr. Carter nodded without hesitation. "Of course. Nobody gets left behind." As they made their way through the damaged corridors, Vera leaned heavily on Jake's shoulder. But she was walking, and her injuries were continuing to heal at an impossible rate. Whatever was happening between them, it was something the galaxy had never seen before. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew louder as the savage claws continued their assault. Ahead lay an uncertain future, but for the first time since the failed diplomatic meeting, Jake felt a spark of hope. Maybe there was a way to bridge the gap between their species after all. The princess, who had once flinched at his touch, now walked beside him, her hand resting trustingly on his arm. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the first step toward something much bigger than either of them could imagine. The abandoned medical facility had become their temporary shelter as the sounds of battle slowly faded in the distance. Jake Morrison sat against a wall watching Princess Vera Star whisper as she tested her newly healed injuries. 3 days had passed since the Savage Claws attack, and they had managed to stay hidden in the deeper levels of the damaged prison complex. Dr. Carter was examining Vera's crystalline skin with fascination. The healing rate is incredible. These fractures should have taken weeks to mend, but they're almost completely restored. Danny Walsh had rigged up a basic power source from salvaged equipment, giving them light and the ability to monitor communication channels. Amy Rogers sat nearby, listening to the various transmissions, trying to piece together what was happening in the outside world. The Savage Claws are gone, Amy reported. But both human and ethereal rescue ships are searching for survivors. They're going to find us eventually. Jake looked at Vera, who was sitting quietly in the corner. She had been watching him constantly over the past few days, her luminous eyes studying his every movement. It was clear she was trying to understand something that challenged everything she had been taught. "You're not what they said you were," she said suddenly, her voice soft but clear. "Humans, I mean, you're not the monsters from the stories." Jake turned to face her fully. "What stories?" Vera's expression grew troubled. "My people have heard tales from other species. They say humans are violent and unpredictable, that you wage war on your own kind and destroy everything you touch, that your emotions are so chaotic they can drive telepathic beings insane." Dr. Carter looked up from her equipment. "Some of that is true. Humans do fight wars and we can be destructive. But that's not all we are." "I know," Vera said, her gaze returning to Jake. "When you touch me, I can feel what you're feeling. Your emotions are strong, but they're not chaotic. They're focused, purposeful." Jake was curious about this. "What do you mean? What do you feel when I touch you?" Vera hesitated, as if trying to find the right words. "For my people, emotions are like light. Joy is warm and golden. Sadness is cool and blue. Anger burns red and painful. But human emotions are different. They're like a symphony where all the instruments play together." She stood and walked closer to Jake, her movements more confident now that her injuries had healed. "May I show you something?" Jake nodded, and Vera reached out to touch his hand. The moment their skin made contact, Jake felt something extraordinary happen. It was as if a door had opened in his mind, allowing him to sense what she was experiencing. Through their connection, he could feel how ethereals experienced the world. Every emotion had a physical sensation that could be overwhelming if not properly controlled. Joy felt like warm sunlight spreading through the body. Fear was like ice water in the veins. Anger burned like fire in the chest. "This is how we feel," Vera explained, her voice seeming to come from inside his head. "Each emotion is pure and separate, but humans ... You feel everything at once. Love mixed with fear, joy tinged with sadness, anger tempered by compassion. It creates a complexity that we've never experienced." Jake was amazed by the sensation. "Is this why the other ethereals collapsed during our meeting? Because they couldn't handle the complexity?" "Yes," Vera said, breaking the connection. "We're trained from childhood to keep our emotions pure and controlled. The mix of feelings that comes naturally to humans overwhelms our systems. It's like trying to look directly at the sun." Danny looked up from his work. "So you're saying humans are basically too emotionally intense for ethereals to handle?" "That's what we believed," Vera said. "But Jake is different. When he touches me, his emotions don't overwhelm me. They ... They stabilize me. It's like his complexity gives me strength instead of pain." Amy frowned. Why would Jake be different from the rest of us? Dr. Carter had been listening intently, and now she spoke up. "It might not be that Jake is different. It might be that the initial contact was wrong. Think about it. We came to that meeting with expectations, hopes, fears about first contact. All of those emotions were at peak intensity." Jake nodded slowly. "But when I found Vera, I wasn't thinking about diplomacy or first contact. I was just focused on helping someone who was hurt." "Exactly," Dr. Carter said. "Your emotional state was clear and focused. You had one goal: to help." That kind of emotional clarity might be something ethereals can actually handle. Vera looked at Jake with new understanding. You saved my life not because you had to, but because you wanted to. That desire to help, to protect, it's so strong in you that it overrides everything else. Over the following hours, Jake and Vera continued to explore their strange connection. She taught him about ethereal society, explaining how their telepathic abilities worked and why they had developed such strict emotional control. He shared stories about human history, both the dark parts and the bright ones. My people believe that chaos is the enemy of peace, Vera said as they shared a meal of emergency rations. We've built our entire civilization around order and control. But you you thrive in chaos, don't you? Jake thought about that. I wouldn't say we thrive in it, but we've learned to work with it. Humans feel things deeply, but we've also learned to channel those feelings into action. Love makes us protective. Anger makes us fight for justice. Fear makes us careful, and hope, Vera added quietly. When you first touched me, I felt your hope. Even though you thought I might die, even though helping me could have killed you, you still hoped it would work out? Jake smiled. Hope is very human. We hope for better things even when everything looks impossible. As they talked, other wounded ethereals began to appear in their hiding place. They were civilians who had been trapped when the savage claws attacked, too injured to evacuate with the others. Jake could see the fear in their eyes as they looked at him and his crew. Let me help them, Jake said to Vera. If my touch can help you heal, maybe it can help them too. Vera nodded and spoke to the wounded ethereals in their own language. Jake could see the terror in their faces as she explained what she wanted them to do. The idea of being touched by a human was clearly their worst nightmare, but one of them, an elderly ethereal with fractures across his arm, stepped forward. If the princess trusts you, he said in broken English, then I will try. Jake approached slowly, his hands visible and non-threatening. When he gently touched the wounded arm, the elderly ethereal's eyes widened in surprise. Instead of pain, he felt the same stabilizing effect that Vera had described. It doesn't hurt, he whispered in amazement. It feels peaceful, word spread quickly among the wounded ethereals. One by one, they allowed Jake to help them. Each time, the result was the same. His touch accelerated their healing and brought them a sense of calm they had never experienced before Dr. Carter was documenting everything. Her medical training recognizing the historical significance of what they were witnessing? This could change everything between our species. If humans can actually help ethereals heal, it proves we're not the monsters they thought we were. As the hours passed, the small group of humans and ethereals worked together to tend to the wounded and organize their temporary shelter. Jake found himself amazed by how quickly the barriers between species could fall when people focused on helping each other instead of fearing each other. My father will never believe this, Vera said as she watched Jake helping an injured ethereal. Child, he's been taught that humans are dangerous. The entire High Council believes it. Then we'll have to show them, Jake said. Just like we showed these people. The sound of approaching vehicles made them all freeze. Through the broken windows, they could see the lights of rescue ships in the distance. Both human and ethereal forces were converging on their location. They're coming, Amy reported. Multiple ships from both sides. Jake looked at Vera, knowing that their time together was about to end. What happens now? Now we find out if what? We've learned here can survive in the real world, Vera said. Are you ready to face my people again? Jake stood up, his crew gathering around him. The wounded ethereals they had helped looked up at him with gratitude and trust instead of fear. It was a small victory, but it felt like the beginning of something much larger. I'm ready, Jake said. The question is, are they ready for us? Outside? The rescue ships were landing, and Jake could hear voices calling for survivors. In minutes he would be face to face with the same ethereals who had branded him a mind poisoner. But this time he wouldn't be alone. He would have Vera beside him, and the testimony of the people he had helped. The real test was about to begin. The rescue ships landed in a cloud of crystal dust and engine exhaust. Jake Morrison stood at the entrance of their makeshift shelter, watching as both human and ethereal forces emerged from their vessels. The tension in the air was thick enough. To cut with a knife, Commander Zara Lightweaver stepped out of the lead ethereal ship, her crystalline armor gleaming in the artificial lights. Behind her came a squad of guards, their weapons ready but not yet aimed. From the human ships, Captain Bill Rogers emerged with his own security team, their faces grim with determination. Princess Vera Starwhisper walked out beside Jake, her silver hair catching the light as she moved. The moment the ethereal rescue team saw her, they rushed forward with relief and joy written across their faces. But when they noticed Jake standing beside her, their expressions changed to horror and confusion. "Princess Vera," Commander Lightweaver called out, her voice tight with worry. "Step away from the human. We're here to rescue you." "I don't need to be rescued from Captain Morrison," Vera replied calmly. "He saved my life." The statement sent a ripple of shock through both rescue teams. Commander Lightweaver's eyes narrowed as she looked at Jake. "What did you do to her? How did you manipulate her mind?" Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. Getting emotional now would only prove their prejudices right. "I didn't manipulate anyone. I helped her when she was wounded." "Lies," Commander Lightweaver snapped. "Your kind are incapable of helping others. You only know how to destroy and corrupt." Before Jake could respond, one of the wounded ethereals they had helped stepped forward. It was the elderly civilian whose arm Jake had treated. "Commander, the human speaks truth. He healed my injuries. All of us who were wounded, he helped." "You saw?" Commander Lightweaver stared at the elderly ethereal in disbelief. "That's impossible." "Human touch is toxic to our kind. It causes madness and death." "Then explain this," Vera said, holding up her arm where the worst of her fractures had been. The crystalline skin was perfect, showing no trace of the severe damage that had nearly killed her. "Captain Morrison touched my wounds, and instead of dying, I healed faster than ever before." Dr. Carter stepped forward from where she had been, documenting everything. "Commander, I've been recording the healing process. The evidence is clear. Human contact accelerates ethereal healing under the right conditions." Captain Rogers looked between Jake and the ethereals, trying to understand what was happening. "Jake, are you telling me you've been treating wounded aliens for the past 3 days?" "Yes, sir," Jake replied. "They needed help, and we were able to provide it." "This changes everything," Captain Rogers said quietly. "If what you're saying is true, then the diplomatic incident was a misunderstanding." Commander Lightweaver's expression remained skeptical. "One human acting differently doesn't change the nature of your species. You're still mind poisoners? Still dangerous to our people?" "Then test it," Vera said suddenly. All eyes turned to her as she continued. "Put Captain Morrison on trial before the High Council. Let them judge for themselves whether he is the monster you claim he is." Jake felt his stomach drop. A trial before the ethereal High Council would be a death sentence. They had already judged humanity based on incomplete information. But before he could object, Vera stepped closer to him. "I will speak for you," she said softly. "I will tell them what I have learned about humans, about you." Commander Lightweaver considered this for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. The High Council will decide the fate of Captain Morrison and his crew, but they will be held under heavy guard until the trial." The journey back to the ethereal homeworld was tense and uncomfortable. Jake and his crew were kept in a secure transport, separated from the ethereal ships by energy barriers. But Vera had insisted on traveling with them, much to Commander Lightweaver's displeasure. "You don't have to do this," Jake said to Vera as they sat in the transport. "Speaking for us at the trial could damage your position with your people." Vera looked at him with those luminous eyes that had become so familiar. "My people have been wrong about yours. If I don't speak up, that wrong will continue forever." Dr. Carter was reviewing her medical data on her portable device. "I've got documentation of everything that happened. Healing rates, emotional readings, interaction patterns. This should be enough evidence to prove we're not the threat they think we are." Danny Walsh was unusually quiet, staring out the window at the ethereal ships escorting them. What if they don't believe the evidence? What if they've already made up their minds? Then we'll deal with whatever comes, Jake said. But we won't stop trying to build understanding between our peoples. The ethereal homeworld looked even more magnificent on their return journey. The crystal spires reached high into the sky, reflecting the light of the three suns in spectacular displays of color. It was a civilization built on beauty and order. So different from the chaotic energy of human cities, the trial was held in the Grand Chamber of the High Council, a massive crystal dome that amplified every sound and reflected every movement. Jake stood in the center of the chamber, feeling very small under the gaze of the 12 council members. Their ancient faces showed no emotion as they studied him. Emperor Marcus Starwhisper sat on the highest throne, his presence commanding respect and fear. His eyes were the same luminous silver as his daughter's, but they held centuries of wisdom and suspicion. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber. "Captain Morrison," the Emperor said, "you stand accused of being a mind poisoner, a threat to the safety and stability of the ethereal empire. How do you answer these charges?" Jake straightened his shoulders and looked directly at the Emperor. "I deny the charges, Your Majesty. Humans are not mind poisoners. We are simply different from your people, and that difference has been misunderstood." "Misunderstood?" one of the council members scoffed. "Your emotions caused severe damage to our diplomatic team. Several of our people nearly died from exposure to your chaotic minds." Because the meeting was handled incorrectly," Vera said, stepping forward. "Father, honored council members, I have spent days with these humans. I have felt their touch and experienced their emotions. They are not the monsters we believe them to be." The council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The idea that the princess had allowed herself to be touched by humans was clearly scandalous to many of the ethereals present. "Emperor," Starwhisper raised his hand for silence. "Explain yourself, daughter." Vera began to speak, her voice clear and strong as she described everything that had happened since the Savage Claws attack. She told them about Jake's selfless decision to help her despite the risk to himself. She explained how his touch had healed rather than harmed. She described the wounded civilians who had been helped by human compassion. "The problem," Vera continued, "is not that human emotions are toxic. The problem is that we approach them with fear and suspicion. When Captain Morrison helped me, his emotions were focused and pure. He wanted only to heal and protect. That kind of focused emotion doesn't hurt us. It helps us." Dr. Carter was given permission to present her medical evidence. She showed the council detailed scans of Vera's healing process, documentation of the accelerated recovery of the wounded civilians, and analysis of the emotional patterns present during healing versus during the original diplomatic disaster. "The evidence is clear," Dr. Carter concluded. "Humans and ethereals can interact safely when both parties approach each other with understanding rather than fear." But the council remained divided. Some members were intrigued by the evidence, while others clung to their old beliefs. The debate went on for hours, with Jake standing silently in the center of the chamber as his fate was decided by others. Finally, Emperor Starwhisper spoke again. "These are serious claims that require serious consideration. But before we make our final judgment, there is one more test that must be performed." Jake felt his heart sink. "What kind of test, Your Majesty?" "You will undergo the trial of truth," the Emperor said. "You will allow our most powerful telepaths to examine your mind directly. If you truly mean no harm to our people, you will have nothing to fear." The trial of truth was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. 3 of the most powerful ethereal telepaths surrounded him, their minds probing deep into his thoughts and memories. He felt them examining every moment of his life, searching for signs of deception or malicious intent. They saw his childhood, his training as a starship captain, his genuine desire for peace between species. They felt his emotions during the diplomatic meeting, the confusion and hurt when things went wrong, the determination to prove humanity's worth. Most importantly, They experienced his feelings when he found Vera wounded and alone. When the telepaths finally withdrew from his mind, Jake collapsed to his knees, exhausted by the mental intrusion. But he could see from their expressions that they had found what they were looking for. "This human speaks truth," the lead telepath announced. "His intentions are pure. He seeks only peace and understanding between our peoples." The council chamber fell silent as the weight of this revelation sank in. Emperor Starwhisper looked at Jake with new eyes, seeing not a monster but a potential ally. "Captain Morrison," the Emperor said slowly, "it appears we have done you." 6 months had passed since the trial that changed everything between humans and ethereals. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Joint Research Station, watching as human and ethereal engineers worked side by side to complete the final sections of what would become the first shared colony in the galaxy. The station orbited a beautiful world that both species had agreed to settle together. Below them, the planet's surface showed the early signs of civilization, crystalline structures that reflected ethereal architecture growing beside the more practical buildings that humans preferred. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when two very different peoples chose cooperation over conflict. Princess Vera Starwhisper approached from behind, her footsteps light but familiar. Over the past months, she had spent more time with humans than any ethereal in history. Her role as ambassador had taken her to Earth, where she had met with human leaders and learned about their complex and chaotic civilization. "The construction is ahead of schedule," she said, moving to stand beside Jake at the viewing window. "Both our peoples are eager to see this experiment succeed." Jake smiled, remembering how different things had been when they first met. "It's hard to believe how much has changed. 6 months ago, your people thought we were monsters. Now look at us." Through the transparent wall, they could see Dr. Lisa Carter working with an ethereal scientist to develop new medical protocols. The combination of human medical knowledge and ethereal healing abilities had already produced remarkable results. Diseases that had plagued both species for centuries were being cured. Through joint research, Danny Walsh had become something of a legend among ethereal engineers. His practical approach to problem-solving complemented their elegant design philosophy perfectly. Together they were creating technology that neither species could have developed alone. Amy Rogers had established the first human ethereal communication center, where young people from both species learned each other's languages and cultural practices. The initial fear and suspicion had given way to genuine curiosity and friendship. "My father is still amazed by the progress," Vera said. "When I first told him I wanted to live among humans, he thought I had lost my mind. Now he's planning to visit the colony himself." Jake chuckled. "The mighty Emperor Starwhisper wants to see how the other half lives? He wants to understand what I found so fascinating about your people," Vera replied. "I think he's beginning to realize that the galaxy is big enough for many different ways of life." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the station's command center. Commander Zara Lightweaver's voice echoed through the speakers, her tone tight with concern. "All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have a situation." Jake and Vera hurried through the corridors of the station, past rooms where humans and ethereals worked together on various projects. The sight still amazed Jake. Beings who had once feared each other's very presence now collaborated as naturally. As breathing dot in the command center, they found Commander Lightweaver studying a holographic display showing the outer reaches of the system. Her expression was grim as she turned to address the assembled group. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive Savage Claws fleet approaching our position," she announced. "They appear to be planning an attack on the colony world." Jake felt his blood run cold. The Savage Claws were the most brutal pirates in this sector of space. If they were planning to attack the joint colony, it would be a disaster for human-ethereal relations. "How long until they arrive?" Jake asked. "Approximately 18 hours, Commander Lightweaver replied. "The colony's defenses are still under construction. We're not prepared for an assault of this magnitude." Dr. Carter looked up from her medical station. "What about evacuating the colonists?" "There isn't enough time," Vera said, studying the tactical display. And even if we could evacuate everyone, losing the colony would set back human ethereal cooperation by decades. Jake studied the enemy fleet composition on the hologram. The Savage Claws had brought everything: battleships, fighters, landing craft, and siege equipment. They weren't just planning to raid the colony, they intended to destroy it completely. We need to call for reinforcements, Amy suggested. Both the human and ethereal fleets could send ships. Commander Lightweaver shook her head. The nearest human fleet is 3 days away. Our own ships are even farther. By the time help arrives, the colony will be nothing but rubble. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the seemingly impossible situation. All their work, all the progress they had made could be wiped out in a single devastating attack. Then Jake had an idea. What if we don't fight them separately? What if we combine our forces? What do you mean? Vera asked. Jake moved to the tactical display, his mind racing as he worked out the details. Humans and ethereals have different strengths in combat. Human ships are tough and aggressive, but ethereal vessels are fast and elegant. Human fighters are heavily armed, but ethereal pilots have telepathic coordination. Separately, we're outgunned. Together, we might have a chance. Commander Lightweaver frowned. Joint operations between our species have never been attempted in combat. The coordination required would be enormous. That's where Vera comes in. Jake said, turning to the princess. You understand both our peoples better than anyone. You could coordinate the battle telepathically with the ethereal forces while maintaining communication with the human ships. Vera's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. You want me to be the link between our fleets during combat? It's dangerous, Jake admitted. You'd be exposed to the chaotic emotions of human warriors in battle. But you're the only one who has experience handling our emotional intensity. Vera was quiet for a moment, considering the risks. Finally, she nodded. I'll do it. This colony represents the future of both our peoples. I won't let it be destroyed. The next 18 hours were a frantic rush of preparation. Human and ethereal. Ships arrived from nearby systems, not enough to match the Savage Claws fleet, but enough to make a fight of it. The real challenge was coordinating two completely different military doctrines into a unified defense. Jake found himself in command of the human contingent while Commander Lightweaver led the ethereal forces. Vera positioned herself on the command ship, establishing telepathic links with both fleets. The strain on her was visible, coordinating the thoughts and emotions of hundreds of warriors from two different species was pushing her abilities to their limit. When the Savage Claws fleet finally arrived, it was even larger than the sensors had indicated. Their ships were ugly and brutal, designed for maximum destruction rather than elegance. They approached the colony world like a swarm of angry insects ready to strip it bare. All ships, this is Captain Morrison, Jake announced. Over the combined fleet communications. Remember, we're not just fighting for territory today. We're fighting for the future of human ethereal cooperation. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships charged directly into the enemy formation, their weapons blazing as they drew fire away from the more fragile ethereal vessels. Meanwhile, ethereal fighters danced between the Savage Claws ships with impossible grace, their telepathic coordination allowing them to strike with surgical precision. Vera's voice echoed in the minds of every pilot and captain, coordinating attacks and warning of incoming threats. Through her, human tactical aggression merged seamlessly with ethereal strategic elegance. The combined fleet fought as one organism, each part supporting the others. The Savage Claws had expected to face divided enemies who would be easy to defeat separately. Instead, they found themselves battling a unified force that seemed to anticipate their every move. Human ships would suddenly appear where Savage Claws vessels were most vulnerable, guided by ethereal prescience. Ethereal fighters would strike at exactly the moment when human ships had drawn enemy fire away from them during the height of the battle. Jake's ship was badly damaged by enemy fire. As he struggled to maintain control, an ethereal cruiser moved to protect him, its elegant hull taking hits meant for his vessel. The sight of an ethereal ship sacrificing itself to save human lives would be remembered for generations. Similarly, when Commander Lightweaver's flagship was surrounded by enemy fighters, human pilots dove into the swarm without hesitation, their heavier weapons clearing a path for her escape. The mutual sacrifice and protection shown by both species during the battle created bonds that would last forever. After 6 hours of fierce fighting, the Savage Claw's fleet finally began to retreat. They had expected an easy victory against divided enemies, but instead found themselves outmatched by a unified force that fought with both courage and wisdom. As the enemy ships limped away from the system, Jake stood on his damaged bridge looking out at the combined fleet. Human and ethereal ships floated together in space, their crews cheering across communication channels in a dozen different languages. "We did it," Vera's voice came through the speakers, exhausted but triumphant. "The colony is safe." Jake smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "No, we all did it, together." The victory celebration that followed became legendary throughout both human and ethereal space. On the colony world below, humans and